If you have ever wished there was a translator between your ADHD brain and the rest of the world, or better yet, someone who could teach you and your kid how to actually thrive in this chaos we call modern life, then buckle up, Buttercup, because today's guest is basically the Tony Stark of mental performance coaching. Brilliant, battle-tested, and a little badass. Dan Mickle is a certified mental performance coach, podcaster, volleyball coach, and founding force behind Soul Performance Academy. He's coached athletes, executives, and parents through the mental minefield of pressure, burnout, and perfectionism. But what makes Dan stand out, what makes him ours, is he doesn't just throw buzzwords around. He teaches focus like it's a skill, not a personality trait. He talks about mindset like it's a muscle, and spoiler alert, it is. And he's here to help parents, especially ADHD parents, figure out how to build that muscle for ourselves and our kids. This is not your average just think positive guru. Dan gets the ADHD brains don't need more motivation. They need structure, tools, and someone who won't sugarcoat the messy middle. Whether he's talking about emotional regulation on the court or resilience in your living room, he's bringing science, sweat, and just enough snark to make it all stick. So grab your cold coffee, toss a snack at your sensory-seeking child, and get ready to meet the coach every ADHD family didn't know they needed until now. Dan, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I'm excited to have this chat.
Me too. So I am a sucker for a good origin story, and I would love for you to tell me the long or short version of yours.
Sure. So it's kind of a mixture of a lot of things. I've been a volleyball coach for 30 years, which is crazy because I started right out of high school at 18, and have been coaching everywhere from the youth level the whole way up to international and professional. And in that time, like everyone else, I started to have a family and grow. And I have three wonderful kids, a 16-year-old daughter, a 14-year-old daughter, and an 11-year-old son. But what I started to notice was they process things a little bit differently than I did. And then of course that led down to the road of, okay, what's going on? And we finally got all three diagnosed with ADHD. And the crazy part for me was they were all different. How it manifests, how they cope, how they deal is completely different. And what that really got me thinking about is, wow, I've been a coach for this long and I have three kids. I'm 3 for 3 with neurodivergent children. How many kids have I coached in the past and I didn't know that they were neurodivergent?
Mm-hmm.
And how did I not in a bad way, but how did I not provide for them probably the best experience? Because I just didn't know what I was doing or recognizing. And at the same time, I was kicking around the idea of going back for my doctorate degree. I have my master's degree in sports psychology. I'm a mental performance coach by day trade and a college coach by part-time at night. But I decided to go back for my doctorate degree, and I was trying to kick around what to go for and thought, this is a great intersection of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on my doctorate in health sciences, and my focus is on coaching considerations for neurodivergent athletes. And I'm just really doing a deep dive of, how can we support athletes that are neurodivergent, whether they're on the autism scale or ADHD, ADD, dyslexia. There's a tons of things that fall under that. So it really just became a passion for me. And my oldest plays volleyball. She's a junior in high school. And just sitting and watching how she interacts with teammates and coaches, and I just realized, like, man, not a lot of people understand what's going on. And the talks that her and I have had is like, we got to get this out.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is there isn't a lot out there from the athletic side. We have a lot of great research from the educational side and the classroom side. So my research has really been researching that. And then how do I modify that to bring that into the athlete world? And then of course, the part that comes into that is, in this whole process, my wife gets diagnosed, so she is also. So we joke that I'm the only neurotypical in the house, but the part that just amazes me is although they all have the same diagnoses, they are all so completely different. I have Morgan, the oldest, has executive dysfunction. The middle one, Lily, has a lot of anxiety issues. And my son is the toucher. He always has to be touching you, hugging you, and nothing really holds them back, but how we deal with it, you know. And I just thought, wow, this is, you think about what could your life's work or mission be, and it kind of just all dropped in my lap at one time. So that's really kind of what started the whole journey.
I love that so much. I believe that everything that we've ever done leads us to where we're going. So your journey is that in a way.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really has shifted my thinking, and I don't want to get into like the guru mindfulness aspect of everything, but I really did start to think about there really isn't good and bad in a lot of this stuff. It's just stuff. And how I look at it and how I interpret it decides whether it's good or bad. So that's how I deal with it, is just taking a stop and say, am I looking at this in a clear lens, or am I bringing in some of my bias to this? And how do I look at it? And it has really changed how I approach everything in life now, kind of looking through that lens.
FYI, you can bring in all the mindfulness guru stuff with me.
It's such a rabbit hole though. Like you end
It
up
is.
talking about it for 20 hours.
So I have a question that you may not be able to answer, but how does your wife feel being diagnosed later in life?
Thankful. We've actually had some really good talks about that because it puts some answers to questions that she's had for years. Why was I like this in college? Why do I have these tendencies? And um, when we're talking now, like the big push is how, you know, quote unquote, this epidemic of autism, and the big push about, there's problems. And for her, it really is. She just finally got diagnosed. Nothing's changed. It's just she finally got to be able to put a title and a situation to it. And I think that's what we're running into. We're afraid to admit that a lot of people have these situations and have just never gotten diagnosed or checked for it for
Yeah.
a lot of reasons. It's could be personal, it could be financial, it could be just you don't care, but um yeah, the talk that we've had is like, wow, that really explains why I studied the way I did in college, or why I acted the way, and why I do some things. So for her, it's been a relief.
Yeah.
Um, I would imagine for some it might be like scary because all of a sudden you're labeled as something, but she really has embraced it, and it has really embraced it, not only being diagnosed, but understanding it and reading it, and kind of learning some changes and ways to cope with it.
That is so wonderful to hear. I ask because I also realized that I had ADHD when my son was diagnosed with ADHD, and that was around 36. So
Yeah,
looking back, it definitely put some puzzle pieces together that had always been outliers.
it's interesting because she mentions like for her the process was filling out all this paperwork and going through like the checklist for our daughter. She's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's me. Wait, that's me. And then it kind of all clicked like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's me. And so it's kind of, been an interesting journey on that.
Yeah. My next question before we dive into the topic, I want to know how it feels to be the only neurotypical in the family because I will never experience that.
It is, and how do I word this I, it's it does, I don't want to take away from them and their struggles, but it's really, really hard. Um, and I think it's really hard because they're all so different. Um, you know, with Lily, my middle one, who is we call her the troll. Like she comes home, she wants to go to her room, and she doesn't like to people a lot. So it's like finding the balance of, oh, I want to go out to dinner, but she doesn't want to go out, and I feel bad leaving her at home, but that's what she wants. Um, Morgan, my oldest, is the one with time blindness and executive dysfunction. So I know that if we're leaving in 15 minutes, she is not going to start get ready until 14 minutes and 30 seconds. And for me, it's just been a struggle of what hills do I die on? What things really matter and really make a difference, and what level of stress. And for me, I think that's where most of my energy has been spent. It hasn't been fighting them. It hasn't been trying to help them. It's been trying to figure out when to step in and when not to step in.
Hmm.
Has probably been the biggest struggle.
I think I'm still working on that. And when to, I guess, jump in and try to help my kid, or when to let him figure it out on his own, or does he really just need someone to listen, and or is he asking for help in the solution? That's really challenging for me.
Yeah, I think for us, the two girls excel in school. Like they've figured it out. Um, my son is still struggling trying to figure out what works. And one of the things that really led to a lot of me rethinking it was he just couldn't do homework. He can't focus. He's definitely the one that has the focus issues. And I just thought about how I was raised in the old school method of, look, sit at the table and you're going to do your homework till you're done.
Yeah.
But then I started, we were doing flashcards for multiplication in like, he's in sixth grade now. So in third grade, we were doing the multiplication stuff. And it was just like pulling teeth, trying to get him sit there and do these cards. And he went up and got a drink. And as he was walking back, I started flashing the cards and he was boom, boom, boom through all the cards. I'm like, this is really weird. And we started to realize that if he stands and is able to kind of move and sway, he can do his homework and no problem.
Yeah.
So it was like, wait, okay, this is a skill we can learn and use. So we stopped doing the sit at the table and do your homework. You have a time limit to do it, but you can do it however you want. If you want to hang upside down and read your book, hang upside down. And man, everything changed for us.
Yeah.
Like it was like flipping a switch. Now there's still struggles. But that's one of the things with his IEP and getting him in school. We talked about like, hey, if he's taking a test, we kind of need him to stand, and he does. And yeah, it's just finding those little moments when we find a success. Why did it happen, and how can we replicate it for everything else?
Yeah.
And will it work with the other ones? And typically it's not, because they're all so different. But yeah, that's it, it's tough figuring out when to jump in and what to do.
I could imagine. I am drowning most of the time with one kid. I can't even begin to process having more than one child on the spectrum or not at this point.
Yeah, it's and part of it is, I hate to say it this way, but it's figuring out which one's drowning most at the moment.
Mm.
So it's throwing the other two life preservers and then swimming out to get the third, and
Yeah.
then we get him on shore, and then we change it up, and I swim out and get someone else. It's just this constant changing, and of course with Morgan being a junior, getting ready to go in her senior year, she's looking at college. So now it's like, oh gosh, I got to prepare you to be on your own.
Yeah.
You're the one that won't bring up your laundry. You're the one that just lays there and doom scrolls on your phone. Like your roommates are going to hate you.
Mm.
So that's the big thing now, is like trying to give her more independence, but let her know that we still support her.
Yeah. It's a big transition coming up.
It is. It is.
I am curious to know, in your doctoral studies, what has been the most surprising thing about neurodiverse students or athletes that you have found out so far?
I would have to say how many neurodivergent athletes and people there are, but don't tell anyone.
Mm.
Um, and that's really tough. I see both sides of it. As the player, you probably don't want everyone to know you're neurodivergent, unless you're like my daughter, who is proud of it and waves the flag. But you don't want to be ostracized or outcast because of that. But if you don't tell the coaches and your teammates, it can make for some uncomfortable situations from a training standpoint.
Yeah.
I think that, and just the lack of how much study there's been done on it. But there's also, in the grand scheme of all research of all everything, the research into neurodivergence and ADHD is slim compared to other things. So when we even take a deeper subsect into the athletic part of it, it's even smaller.
So my son has combined type, but his hyperactivity and his natural abilities to be very on top of sports has made him really a great athlete. And so we got to the point where we told him, hey, we all have ADHD. And I thought, I don't want him to look down on it or think that there's something wrong with him. So I started finding stories of successful people with ADHD. And I was really surprised there are a ton of other athletes who have used their hyperfocus to become the greatest in their field. And so that was really surprising for me, but I guess it shouldn't have been, seeing how good he is with sports. But yeah.
It's interesting. And I think you hit on it when you said about the hyper focus. A lot of people think ADHD is just this scatterbrained, and it's really not. It's the hyper focus, and it blocks everything else out. I hear all the time people are like, oh, ADHD athletes must be able to do a ton of tasks. And I'm like, no, that's the opposite. It's almost like it's named incorrectly. They can't do a lot of tasks because they get so hyper focused on a task that everything else shuts down. Yeah, I also think it's interesting how many of those elite athletes probably didn't have a diagnosis until they were elite athletes.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, if we could have identified that earlier, like Michael Phelps is a great example of that. I don't know his complete clinical makeup, but hyper focus, elite athlete, debilitating anxiety, looks for medication and ways to curb it. Like all the signs were there, but no one put it together like at 12 or 14. So I think that's part of it as well. He found a coach that understood it when he was younger and could manifest it. And I think there's just probably for every Michael Phelps, and not from a physical standpoint, but just from a mental breakup, there's probably for every Michael Phelps, there's probably 150 kids.
Yeah.
That aren't finding that coach or that support system that can help them kind of thrive.
Is your next step on the ADHD parenting journey treatment, but you're feeling a little apprehensive? You, my friend, are not alone. So many of us want options that are science-backed and parent-approved. Meet Dr. Richard Bowles, geneticist, ADHD dad, and creator of NeuroNeeds. When his own son was struggling, he created a powerful, all-natural supplement that helped his son get off stimulant meds completely and thrive all the way to college. It's called NeuroNeeds, and it's packed with exactly what ADHD brains need to function, focus, and regulate without the side effects. If you're curious, hit the link in the show notes to check it out. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter while you're there, because right now, NeuroNeeds is doing us a solid by giving away a free brain bundle, and all you have to do to be considered is to sign up for the newsletter. Because you deserve science you can trust and support you can feel. You have spoken about the pitfalls of the one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to neurodiverse kids. Can you share examples of how individualized strategies have made a difference outside of Michael Phelps?
Yeah, I can give you some personal ones, and some of the changes that I've made as a coach. For example, how we handle timeouts on my team. If I know that I have a neurodivergent athlete and they have, some sort of situation where it might be tough to understand during a timeout, I don't force them to be part of the group. We'll break up. Okay. Hey, us group of 6 are going to talk about this. You go get water, get your mind right. And then when you join us, we'll bring you up to speed instead of forcing them in the timeout to kind of do what everyone else is doing. A big one that I learned this my time working with some of the athletes in the program at the USA sitting volleyball team for the Paralympics. One of the things that they do is your time before a match is your time. Typically in a high level situation, what you see is, you get the bus, you get to the venue, everyone gets there, and everyone gets quote unquote their game face on. You're ready, and then we start our official warm up. One of the things that they do is they give the athletes time to do whatever they want. So if you want to go sit in the stands and talk to your parents for 10 minutes, go sit them. If you want to sit in the corner and listen to music, go ahead. If you want to just run around and get the energy out, go ahead. We're not going to dictate everything that you do until we're ready to start our official warm up in our period. I think that's probably the biggest strategy that all coaches can is everything that you do may not work for everyone. Now, we obviously can't cater for everyone, but if our job as coaches is to get the best out of everyone we're working with, then we need to take into consideration what gets them there. Warm up music is another one. If you're working with a player that's an elite player but has a hypersensitivity to sound, but the rest of your team wants a super loud music to pump them up, how do you find that balance?
Yeah.
Maybe it's letting that athlete go out in the hallway and get their game prep on and then rejoin, once the music dies out. There's a lot of different things, but that's probably the biggest problem. We get in these, this is how I was trained, this is the courses and coaching education I went through, this is how we're going to run it, and we don't modify it. And it's not just for neurodivergent athletes, just athletes. We should take a better look at how can we modify what we do, again, to get the best out of everyone, because that's ultimately our job.
Agreed. I think it's tricky walking that balance, but if you can navigate that as a coach, you probably see the best from all players. So if you could just take that time to dig down into it.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem that we're running into is the climate and culture of coaching is tough right now for multiple reasons. But we see all the horror stories, the inappropriate relationships and contacts with coaches and athletes. So coaches have kind of dialed back developing those really personal relationships with players because they're scared of how it may be perceived or what might happen. The problem is, if we don't develop those relationships, how do we know what a player truly needs to succeed? So it's that fine line of, hey, how can I really care and be a part of the life of my athletes, but not cross that line where it's creepy, weird, and like for me, I'm a 50-year-old white male coach coaching college women's volleyball. So there's a lot of times that I'm like, am I in the right place at the right time? How would this look if someone walked in on this? But I've also been like, I can't hold back because my team has told me we need more from you. We need more love. We need more support. And I was like, yeah, I dialed it back because I was really worried about how it might look. So it's just, finding that balance with everything. Unfortunately, especially with youth sports, it's usually volunteer, they're underpaid, and they have to pick, what am I going to spend my time on? I can learn the X's and O's of my sport, or am I going to spend this time on the emotional support and things like active listening and all that? So for me, it's been like, how can I add those things into the X's and O's? How can I get coaches to say, okay, you don't need to take 30 minutes out of your practice time to work on these life skills. How can you incorporate teaching the life skills while you're teaching the X's and O's? And I think that's the piece that's been missing. It doesn't have to be separate, but we have to take the time to figure out how to make it together.
I think I skipped over a really important part. You said that one of the pitfalls is that people are not outright saying, I'm on the spectrum. How do we get athletes, in particular youth athletes, to feel comfortable and open up with that?
Yeah. So it takes creating a safe place for that to happen. And that takes a lot of work because that takes a lot of time to develop. I'm shocked when I go out to do coaching clinics, whatever sport it is. I do a lot of volleyball specific stuff, but I also do a lot of general sports. And it never ceases to amaze me how many coaches don't have a coaching philosophy. What do you stand for as a coach? And that's where it starts, because you have to have your philosophy, which then creates the environment. And if I don't feel safe in that environment, and I'm not talking physically safe, I'm talking emotionally, I guess, safe, I'm not going to open up. I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. So it really takes training and adding it into our coaching education training to how do we work on that. The easy ones, I hate to say it, but the easy ones are the ones that are on medication. Only because most sports require that coaches carry medical releases or forms, in case something happens when they're traveling, and it'll say on there what medications that kid's on. So when I was coaching youth, that's the first thing I'd look at. Okay, what medications is this on? Okay, you don't need to tell me that you're on, that you're ADHD, but I see the medications you're on, so I know what's up. That's the easy way to do it. Um, I've gotten to the point where when I'm doing camps or clinics, I'll just flat out ask. I'll say, hey, who here is, if you're not comfortable saying it now, we can talk elsewhere and privately, but it will help me get the best out of you if I know. Um, the problem is it doesn't just help to have the coaches involved. If you're a team sport, your teammates kind of need to know because they want to know why are you always moving? Why are you always talking? Why are you always asking? Well, that's how I de-stress. That's how I move on. So it just all goes back to we have to be able to create that environment. And I think a lot of organizations are afraid to have that conversation. Um, I used to run a club and we didn't talk about it much. Now, this was before I got really deep into it, but I would think that if I started a new club or a new program, that would be one of the big agenda items for the parent meeting. Like, hey, I want to create a safe space. I need to know as much as I can about all the athletes to help them, get better. But it doesn't happen. We don't get to know our teammates.
Yeah. I think your work does a good job of highlighting the need for psychological safety of neurodivergent athletes. But I'm wondering if you have any tips for us as parents to foster that, maybe even before they get to you, for emotional and behaviorally.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems that I come across is neurodivergent youth really do want to express themselves and maybe get the help, but they don't know how to ask for it. What I have found is getting kids to journal out those conversations. Like, I'm struggling. I want to talk to mom about it. I don't know how to do it. Write it out. Have that conversation on paper with fictitious mom so that when you go and have the real talk with mom, you've already worked through it and kind of gotten you comfortable. I think too many times they put it off and then they just want to have the conversation. It's really uncomfortable for everyone. Um, the other one is, and this I use for everything. It's not even just for, I use it more for any of the conflict resolution stuff, but it works great in the neurodivergence world is asking for real-time permission to have those conversations. A lot of times we just want to jump in and help. And a lot of times, like conflict, we just want to jump in and end the conflict, but maybe the other person isn't ready. So, for example, with Morgan and I, when I see her struggling, instead of just jumping in and saying, "Hey, let's work on this," or "Let's do it," I ask for that real time permission. Hey, are you in a spot where we can work on this? Are you in a spot where we can have this conversation? And if she says no, okay. Now, I'm not going to let her say no 5 times in a row and never get to it, but hopefully she starts to recognize, like, okay, that's my signal that I need to start getting my thoughts together because we are going to have this conversation. Um, I don't know how much you've ever seen there's for years have been this thing about the car ride home with your son or your daughter after an athletic event and how it should be. I loved seeing you play, and that's all great, except especially with the neurodivergent player, they might be waiting for you to start that conversation because they need to talk through something. So my suggestion is do all that. Love seeing you play. Thought you did a great day. Hey, is there anything you want to go over or do you want to talk
Mhm.
about anything? And if it's no, if it's a true no, then let it go. But a lot of times they're trying to piece it together and it's not that they don't want to talk about it. It's just not, they're just not sure how to take those steps and they need our guidance. And, like her and I talks will be like, hey, how do you think you played today? I played all right. I'm like, okay, well, do you want to go deeper as to why it was all right and not great? Or are you okay? She's like, no, I just struggled on this. Okay. And it's just constantly having them. But I think we've gotten to the point where we're so scared to talk about it because we don't want to break that parent kid like trust. But sometimes they're asking for us to it because they
Yeah.
need the help. So it's again, I think the biggest tip is just kind of feeling it out and being okay saying, okay, no, we won't talk about it now, but we'll talk about it later. Um, and having them write it out is big for them. Um, the other thing is finding little wins. Um, my youngest who struggles the most with just everything, like his room's a mess and it's always going to be a mess. I've come to agree that. But instead of saying, hey, I need you to clean your room, let's go, maybe it's, hey, I just need you to pair your socks up and put your socks away. Low hanging fruit, 5 minutes, he does it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can do this. Okay, now we're going to move to my books and I'm going to organize my books. I think too many times we don't chunk it up enough for our neurodivergent people, and that is a huge help.
Agreed. I feel like the small wins build their confidence so that they see that it's not this overwhelming challenge. They're like, hey, I can do this.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of people hear that and say, well, that's for anyone, right? And it is, but the difference is if you have a neurotypical doing it, they'll still be unmotivated, but they'll do it. They won't be happy about it. They'll be miserable. Typically for neurodiverse, they'll just not do
Yeah.
it then. Then it just doesn't get done. So it's just that battle. And it's interesting because we're blessed that all our family lives here. Like my in-laws, my parents, everyone lives within a 10-minute drive from us. My parents literally live 5 doors up. So we get to hang out a lot, but they're very old school and they're learning. So like when Lily doesn't want to go out and go to eat, my mom gets upset, like, well, just get her in the car and she'll be fine. I'm like, no, she will be miserable the whole time. And then it's going to be 3 days of this versus just night. So it's been a lot of educating those around us how to deal with it, because it's tough for us and we make progress and then we put them in environments where people aren't used to it. And then we kind of regress back to where we were. So a lot of it's just like, well, how do we tell our parents how they could help, but not sound like we're telling
Yeah.
our parents how to parent? Because obviously they've been through it. So like that balance is tough as well.
And it's crazy that it's tough for me because both of my parents have ADHD. So sometimes I just want to shake them like, you know this, you've been through this, you've seen it in me, you've seen it in yourself. So why are we going over it again?
I, there's a lot of conversations where I have people my parents' age, in the 60s, the 70s, and 80s, and it's like, well, we didn't have these problems growing up. And I was like, really? Well, we had that one weird kid in school, and your uncle's kind of a little. I'm like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. That weird kid that you had in school is the
Yeah.
neurodivergent kid. That weird uncle is the neurodivergent uncle. Like now you're starting to see, and like, oh, just never really
Yeah.
thought of it that way. They're quirky. Yes, quirky. That's
Yeah.
neurodivergent typically.
One episode sticks out in my mind. My dad is old school and he doesn't like devices at the table, at the dinner table. So I told my son, I was like, hey, Papa is old school. He doesn't really like devices. Could we leave the device in the car and just focus on, Papa and dinner? He was like, sure. And very quickly, I think my dad's seen we need this device because if not, we're going to be spending 40 minutes entertaining him. No one's getting to eat and life is chaotic. So it's just one small
Yeah,
example.
yeah. I get the screen time argument, but there's just times I couldn't get work done if I didn't give my kids
Yeah.
like their iPad, especially like during
Mm.
COVID. We're all locked in together and we're trying to do stuff. Like, yeah, I'm trying to limit screen time, but if I don't, I'm not
Yeah.
getting anything done.
Yeah.
And it's just again finding those balances and taking the time to actually look at it. And I think really the first step is just admitting, okay, he
Yeah.
might be neurodivergent or I am neurodivergent. So how do I deal with that?
I love what you said in there about asking for permission to start a challenging conversation. But I'm wondering if there is a way to flip that and start giving our kids the self advocacy skills that they would need to start those conversations on their own.
Yeah, for me, the way I found and kind of navigated that was again finding the situations where they could do it that are kind of low hanging fruit. Um, you go to Red Robin as a family, one of the kids gets something that was wrong or undercooked. Typically, I'd be like, hey, their dinner's wrong. This is a good chance for you. You tell the waitress, hey, this isn't cooked the way I liked it, or it's missing this or that. We'll probably never see this waitress again. We get to go home and forget about it, but you have that moment so that when it becomes that big moment with a coach or a teacher or a parent, how can you do it? Um, Morgan, my oldest, is the bossy one, and she has absolutely no problem calling people out. That comes from when she was little, just having her do it. There were a lot of, well, this isn't the ice cream I wanted. Then go tell them that's the ice cream that you wanted. But again, it's just finding those little moments where it may be scary to them because they're talking to an adult, but it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
The worst case is going to happen is I'm going to have to step in and say, no, we really need this burger. Well done. Um, versus something like a grade or money or something like that. That's a much bigger issue.
You've dropped so many nuggets so far. I mean, I really don't even know how much more you could elaborate on it, but you've written extensively about the collaboration between coaches and parents in neurodivergent athletes. What further advice do you have for parents that are looking to build those effective partnerships with not only coaches, but therapists, educators, and the likes?
Get involved and ask, but read the room. Um, don't wait. And from the coaching side specifically, let's start there. From the coaching side, don't wait until there's a problem to have that first ever conversation with a coach. Everyone's going to be on their defenses. It's not going to be a great conversation. It's a fine balance of creating a relationship with a coach and making sure that it doesn't look like you're sucking up to get playing time or, all of that. But for me, one of the biggest things as a coach, and to this day, I love it. And thank God my parents of my players know this, is sometimes all I need is just say, hey, how are you doing, coach? And that's it. We don't have to have a discussion or, that starts to build that. And that's where it can start. It doesn't have to be this great big conversation. It could be a very simple, if you're on a travel team and you're out, having lunch with the coach or inviting the coach to your parent lunch. Now most coaches might say no because they think it's a trap and it's going to be this whole thing, but just getting to know the coach and truly getting to know them. Like, I want to know, like, oh, do you have siblings? Do you, what's your background? Did you play? What did you like playing? What's your hobbies? um Things like that. We shouldn't be afraid to have those conversations and start those bonds. With the therapist, it's a little bit different because obviously there's some of that confidentiality and there's going to be things that your kid will tell the therapist, but they won't tell you because of how it works. So for that, it's just making sure they know that you're available and you're open to talk and that you're taking it seriously. I know a lot of parents that just drop their kids at therapy and that's it. They don't ever talk about it. And there needs to be, again, like the conversation when my kids come back and they take therapy once a month. When it started, they were once a week, because we had no idea how to deal with any of this. But now we've got them mostly to once a month. But it's almost the same conversation after practice. Hey Mo, how was therapy? Good. Did you have a good talk? Yeah, it was great. Did you work some stuff out? Yeah, we worked some stuff out. Okay, anything that we need to talk about? No, I think we're good. That's it. You know, Sometimes there's times of, yeah, we were working stuff and didn't get it. Okay, do we need to schedule another appointment? Or are you okay for a month? You know, the big one as they get older, like Morgan just had hers and she's like, I think I don't want to go anymore. I'm like, like, I know it feels like it's not doing a lot, but I really think it is. So I'm like, can you go one more time or can you go and let's just see how it goes? And then she comes out, oh, it was great. And I
Yeah.
scheduled my next appointment, you know? So it's just like one of those, once you get there, you're fine. So I think the collaboration is just, you have to start the conversation somewhere. And it's easier to start a conversation at the beginning of the relationship versus when there's a problem with the relationship. So finding those moments where you can just chat with the coach, chat with the therapist about things. You go into a therapist room and there's usually a lot of stuff. So I look around like, oh, there's a lot of dandelions in here. Do you like dandelions? And it's, maybe we talk about that. And same with coaches. Oh, I see you're wearing a Mets jersey to practice. Are you a Mets fan? Are you a baseball fan? And just it doesn't have to be about that sport. It's just about actually getting that relationship down. And we just don't take
Yeah.
the time to get them.
I think the bit in there about not waiting until there is a conflict is gold. So many parents, I myself have been guilty in the past, wait until there is a blow up situation, and that is not the that will not be the good first impression you are wanting to leave in the relationship.
Yeah, and it's just I feel like especially in the sport world, there's so many opportunities to have conversations. It's probably one of the easiest places to have conversations because you know that you're all there for the same reason. So then it's just finding out like a little bit deeper meaning
Mm.
of that stuff. And it goes the same way with kids. You're on a team and you have one kid that's constantly late and the team starts getting upset, feeling like that kid's not dedicated or they don't have buy-in. But then when you dig deeper, you find out like that kid is a single parent home and he's helping take care of his little brother till his mom gets home. Now that kind of makes you feel a little bit different about, man, they go home from school, do all that work, and then come to practice. I'm just hanging out and then I go to practice. But again, we don't take the time to sit down. We do all this, and I'm sure you've seen it. This is kind of what led to a lot of the stuff is we do all this team bonding stuff. And it's so overloading for neurodivergent athletes. Like I just played all day in this tournament. I just need to decompress and take it all in. And I'm being forced to go to Applebee's and have dinner with my whole team that I don't want to talk to right now. And I don't want to talk
Yeah.
about how the day went, but we're forcing them. So we take all these moments to have this like forced team bonding when it could have been time for us just to have downtime and really just start to learn about each other. It's I don't know if you've been to many team bonding things, but I can't tell you the last time that as a team bonding thing, we all gone to dinner somewhere and we actually talked about the team and how to get better. It's always been complaining about the coach, complaining about the event, how much it costs, but there's never about, oh, so tell me about your daughter or why did you choose? We just don't talk about that. So why do the bonding
Yeah.
to begin with?
That is good. That is really good. I am curious because well, that's very generalized, but a lot of neurodivergent athletes would be visual learners. How do you incorporate those kind of quirks into your coaching?
I do a lot of show it, then explain it. Um, so for example, if we're learning a new skill, instead of sitting there and saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it, this is what I want you to do, we'll just go do it. And then we'll talk through it. That
Yeah.
seems to help a lot. Um, and they're probably not going to do it right, which is good because that's the teachable moment. Like, okay, hey, you did a great job, but if we tweaked these one or two things, you'd be doing it perfect. Because what happens is if I'm sitting there explaining, okay, this is our footwork and this is our hand placement, and this is what the neurodivergent is just gone, right? They're looking at counting the tiles on the roof and they're singing some song. So yeah, with the visual aspect is just show them what you want. Show them what you want, and then you can work. We have a term in USA volleyball through our coaching stuff that we use called feed forward. So we use feed forward instead of feedback. So instead of having them do it and then telling them what they're doing wrong, we tell them what we want and how to do it before they do it. And just how it shifts the mindset and how they work is completely different.
Yeah.
So that's a big one even for parents. If you can find moments where you can tell your kids what you expect and how to do it right versus telling them how they did it wrong, you're going to help with the motivation and usually get a better product that way.
I could not agree more. You know how every ADHD morning feels like a chaotic mix of missed shoes, half-brushed teeth, and a meltdown over the wrong color bowl? Yes, welcome to my life. But Goalie has been a total game changer in our house. It's a screen-free device made just for our kids. And it's helping my son actually stick to routines without me losing my mind. What makes the difference? The visuals and the rewards. My son can see exactly what comes next, which means less arguing and a whole lot more independence. And because Goalie lets him earn rewards for completing steps, he actually wants to do it. He's brushing his teeth and packing his bag like it's a game because for him, It kind of is. If you're tired of being the reminder, the timer, and everything else in between, check out Goalie. The affiliate link is in our show notes. It supports the podcast and your sanity because your kid deserves to feel capable, and you, my friend, deserve hot coffee.
A big one, a big example is unloading our dishwasher. I could say, hey, unload that dishwasher, and it'll take 30 times for me to ask, and they'll do it. And then I'll be like, you didn't put the dish, you put these dishes here and this bowl here. Instead, I'm like, hey, can you do the dishwasher? And don't forget the bowls are on the left, and make sure the silverware is all sorted. And that's it. And it changed that whole situation from, okay, 10 minutes and they do it. And there might be one or two they missed versus 30 minutes of redoing it because it was just all over the place.
Yeah. Dan, I'm not going to lie. As a basketball mom, I would selfishly pick your brain all day. But
Wow.
I want to ask one last question, and then I want to open up for you to tell about your amazing events coming up.
Sure.
How do we, and I think you have a special insight on this as a neurodivergent dad, how do we encourage neurodivergent individuals or athletes to embrace their unique strengths? And what can we do to foster that positive self image?
I think we have to figure out a way to call them out when they're doing it and it's being successful. Um, for example, my daughter, when it's a clutch game, clutch moment, she likes to move. Like she's just constantly swaying back and forth, dancing. Um, and I tell her, like, embrace that. And if a coach says anything, you just say, do you want the best of me, or do you want me to what conforms to what you think it should be? And just getting to the point, like, and now the coach realizes, okay, when she's dancing and moving around in the huddle, she's not disrespecting me. That's how she's taking the information in.
Mm.
Um, she has gotten to the point where she'll tell new coaches, like, hey, this is how I am. I respect you. I will do it. But there's just times that you're going to feel like I'm zoning out, but that's how I listen. And I think that came because she finally embraced, like, he's right. I'm a much better player if I'm loose like this. I'm a much better player if I do this.
Yeah.
So calling them out, like, um, some players have to prepare. Like, shoes are packed ahead of time. Jerseys are folded, almost OCD-ish, right? Instead of being like, oh, joking about it, but like, hey, if you want your best game tomorrow, make sure you're packed and you're ready to go. And making sure that they realize, like, I do play my best when that stuff, is on the side and
Yeah.
ready to go. So I think the biggest thing that parents can do and coaches can do is just recognize the things that are helping them be better and praising them so they know it's okay to showcase it and continue to advocate for it. Because if you call them out and you're like, oh, you're being weird again, she'll stop doing it. And then you're not going to get the best of her. Then you're going to be upset because the team's not performing. She's going to be upset because she's not performing. And it just, you have to have that moment where you can kind of call them out for doing good. What's the old say, praise in public and criticize quietly. It's the same thing. Praise those moments that are successful and help them be successful. And then, and there are times that neurodivergent athletes are a distraction or having issues. So you do have to have those conversations. It's not like they get free reign, but those are the ones that you pull them aside and say, this is how you should adjust it.
Yeah. Fully noted. So you have a couple of amazing events where people can work with you. I would love for you to share it with our listeners because if they're like me, they're dying to get in on it.
Sure. I have two big ones coming up, and everything I do you can find at danmickle.com. So I have links to all my e-courses. Like I have a lot going on. I'm trying to consolidate it so it's kind of all over the place. But I have a free webinar for coaches about supporting your athletes. That is on June 8th from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then for players, I'm having a mental skills boot camp. It's an hour long for 4 days, July 21st through July 24th, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. It's all via online Zoom. but it's just going through different skills to help athletes and neurodivergent athletes. And then lastly, I just started developing email courses. You know, everyone does Zoom meetings and online courses. I wanted to do something that was just really easy. Just get it. So I started doing free 7-day email courses. Every day you just get something new to your email for 7 days that's specific. One is supporting your neurodivergent athletes. One is being the best sport parent you could be. One is, you know, coaches and being the best coaches, which will eventually lead to a 30-day email course. Again, you don't have to take any quizzes. You don't have to do anything. It's just every morning you wake up and there's, you know, a 1,500 word email with some strategies, call to actions, and actionable things that you can do in that space. And then, of course, I'm launching a bunch of online courses, you know, traditional 14-week courses for athletes and coaches and parents. So a lot going on, but yeah, it can all be found. My newsletter, everything can be found at danmickle.com. I do a weekly newsletter, which I forgot to push out today, so I got to get that out today. But so
I have one question, and of course, we'll link all of those in the show notes.
sure.
The boot camp for athletes, is there an age range on that?
No. Typically I say for how in depth we go with some of the stuff, I would say 11 or 12 is probably the bottom. I wouldn't go 8, 9, or 10 yet. But 11, 12-year-olds are more than welcome.
You have dropped, no kidding, I can't wait to go back and re-listen to this because I needed the reminders on so much of it. If there's one thing you could leave listeners with, what would it be?
I think it goes back to the not one size fits all. I think we need to treat everyone, and it's not just neurodivergent athlete. It's just everyone that if our job is to get the best out of them, whether it's coaches, parents, teachers, there has to be some uniqueness to how we train and what we do. And we need to take the time to get those relationships down and figure out how to do it.
Thank you so much for your time today, Dan. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I love talking about it. And, yeah, hopefully your listeners get some little nuggets here and there. And I just love it. It's weird when you're this old and you finally find your passion, right? Like, it's just like, okay, this is what I was meant to do. It took a long time getting here, but yeah, I just love every aspect of it.
I think it was Freud that said your first 40 years are just for experiments and life begins at 40. So we're right on track.
Yeah, I'm set then. Everything's perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, y'all, can we just take a collective breath and say thank you, Dan? Because somewhere between the mindset hacks and the mental training gold, I felt like my frontal lobes sit up straighter. This man isn't just coaching volleyball teams. He's coaching humans back to themselves. ADHD parents like us don't need more noise. We need clarity. And Dan, he handed over like a damn gift basket of executive function with a little side of you've got this. So, whether you're leaving this episode ready to help your kid handle pressure without melting down in the cereal aisle, or just slightly more convinced that your brain isn't broken, just built different, know this: you're not alone and you're not stuck. You've got tools now. You've got Dan's voice echoing in your head like a hype man in a hoodie. And you've got this community of Chaos and Caffeine rebels right here with you. Until next time, remember, mindset is a muscle, rest is not weakness, and your ADHD kid isn't too much. They're too brilliant to be boxed in. Go be the lighthouse. The world is wild, but you, my friend, you're wilder.